Hello and welcome. Bending spoons with his mind brought him worldwide fame and skepticism, but he endures as the best-known paranormal practitioner on the planet, with a range of powers that baffle most people. He remains enigmatic and a health and fitness fanatic, as well as a successful businessman. This week on One, meet paranormalist Uri Geller.
This is James Dean's spoon.
So these actually are like historic spoons?
Yes,
as well?
this was found in the glove compartment of the Porsche that he died in. This is Elvis Presley's spoon here. This is John Lennon's. And I just put this spoon on. King George III ate soup with this spoon.
The term spoonbender doesn't do justice to the range of powers this entrepreneur and entertainer seems to display, though that's what he's most famous for. Uri Geller says he first discovered his paranormal abilities as a child, being brought up by just his mother. He grew up in Israel, doing his national service in the army, and went on to modeling and performing in Tel Aviv nightclubs. As word of his abilities spread, Geller traveled the world both to demonstrate his skills and to be tested by the world's leading scientists who documented their findings in leading journals. The paranormalist also says that in the past he was employed by governments who wanted to try to use his powers for covert operations. Uri Geller still has many detractors and often ends up in legal battles with them for declaring him a fraud. But the mainstream media still regularly features him, and Geller mixes with the powerful and famous, from politics to entertainment. Britain became his home, and he settled with his wife and 2 children not far from London. From there he promotes young artists and supports charities for needy children. Uri, it's great to talk with you. Over the years, you've been applauded, criticized, questioned, believed, disbelieved. All these years on, how do you handle that? How do you handle the mixed reviews you've had?
Well, you know, I learned that any criticism about myself is positive. There is no such thing as bad publicity. And I learned that a long, long time ago. Yes, when I was young and naive and quite gullible, I thought, oh, a bad article, that'll destroy my career. But it did exactly the opposite. As a matter of fact, the cynics and the skeptics were almost acting as my unpaid publicists. And I say, you know, no matter what you write about me, as long as you spell my name correctly, that's always good. Or I don't read the criticism, I measure it. And I learned to live with it. But you must not forget that criticism, the people who attacked me throughout my career, are a tiny minority. They're not really important.
Now, you get labeled spoonbender, but your powers are much more than that. But you became famous because of the bending the spoons. When you see, you know, Uri Geller spoonbender, what do you think?
Yes, I'm many times being called a spoonbender, and I smile because, look, let's face it, spoonbending made me a household name. I mean, that catapulted me into, you know, being recognized world over. And it is something that I cannot shake off. It's difficult. But I respect it, because no matter how trivial the spoon-bending demonstration is, it is always fascinating and riveting and amazes people. And I'll tell you, it's now close to 35 years ago that David Dimbleby on the BBC sat me down and handed me a spoon. And do you know what I did? I looked into the camera. I don't know why I did it. And I said, now you people at home, go and get a spoon and go and get a broken watch. I didn't realize that I was sending 10 million people to the kitchen, but everyone came back holding spoons and watches. You know, they were all skeptical. They said, come on, what is he saying? Uri Geller is saying that he's going to bend my spoon in my living room or make my watch work. But this is what happened. Just to remind everyone, I held the spoon and I began to stroke it very gently. And I talk to the spoon when I do this. I say to it, bend, and I say to it, melt. At that time, I used to talk to it in Hebrew. Today, I send messages to the metal in English. And very soon, I hope, the metal will, yes, it's beginning. I can feel it now. You know, Riz, will you be very kind to hold the spoon here?
Sure.
And look what will happen. I can feel it getting soft. You see the metal is giving away. And it becomes, let me just show it like this to the camera, it becomes so soft, almost like plasticine. And there's absolutely no heat whatsoever in the metal, and it's going to go, and there, and touch it, you'll see it's cold.
Yeah.
The second that spoon melted on the BBC's telephone system blew up. So many people called in a panic saying, my spoon bent in my living room, my watch is ticking now. And that catapulted me into, becoming a household name.
Now, of course, I know I've seen you bend a spoon before, and I saw it actually curling over, and I think actually once you'd put it down, it carried on curling over.
Yes.
Do you know the limit of your power? Do you know how much power you have, what you can do?
I believe that we all have mind powers. I think they're dormant. One has to learn how to awaken these energies. Very few people can bend spoons. Yes, magicians can do it with tricks and so on. But genuinely, it's very, very rare. I believe that my powers or forces or talents, call it whatever you want to, are quite broad. I do extrasensory perception. I can convince and influence people. I dowse. I found oil fields and gold mines for major mining companies. I also help sick people, sick children mainly. I'm not a healer, nor a miracle worker, but I believe in the power of positive thinking. That's what I do today. I guess I'm a motivator. I'm a person that inspires others to change their lives for the better.
Now, there are skeptics still, of course, and there'll be people who saw that spoon break, and they will still be skeptical. But you've been tested. How far have you been tested in what you can do to authenticate it?
I have been tested in dozens and dozens of laboratories around the world. But it was the CIA that actually got me out of Israel in 1972. They sent a scientist to test me there. And his name was Andrei Puharich, and he saw me perform. And then he called me over to his table. This was in a nightclub. And he said to me, Uri Geller, if what I've seen you do is real, and it's not magic, then you must allow us to test you. And I agreed. I left, went straight to Stanford Research Institute, where they put me in shielded rooms, under bell jars. I mean, they tested me. I became a guinea pig. From there, they took me to the Lawrence Livermore Radiation Laboratories. That's where they build nuclear weapons. From there, they took me to the American Naval Surface Weapons Center. From there to the University of London, to Max Planck Institute. I've been tested by scientists who worked with Albert Einstein, David Bohm, people like Dr. Werner von Braun. You know, he started NASA's rocket program. I can name you scientists that are world famous, and most of them, if not all of them, agreed that yes, this is real. This is not a trick. There is a mind power involved here.
Looking at your childhood, it was a tough one, wasn't it? Taking you back, it was actually quite a hard upbringing you had.
I had a very tough childhood. First of all, I came from a very poor family. We were constantly broke. My mother was a waitress and a seamstress. My father sort of left us.
And this was born in Israel when you were
I was born in
Israel,
Tel Aviv in Israel. My mother struggled. I discovered my energies, my powers when I was only 4 years old. Very few people know this, but I'm related to Sigmund Freud. My mother is a Freud. So when I first discovered my powers, a spoon bent in my hand while I was eating soup. My mother immediately...
You were 4 or 5 years old.
Yes, I was about 4.5. My mother thought, oh, it's inherited from Sigmund Freud. And as I grew older, I was bullied in school. Kids thought that I was a freak. Then I was taken to Cyprus, where my mother remarried. My stepfather died immediately, so we were left there in the war. You know, the British were fighting the Greeks were fighting the Turks. I've seen people blown up, shot to death in front of me, bombs, curfews, and I was only 11. Then I had to go back to the Israeli army, and a terrible thing happened to me there. The most life-changing moment in my life was, and I'll tell you what, it is to me, it is a very powerful spiritual moment. I was fighting in the Six-Day War in Ramallah, right on the French hill where King Hussein started building his villa. And you know, from nowhere, a Jordanian soldier popped out from behind a rock. And we both stared at each other. He was holding a machine gun, I was holding my Uzi. And I looked into his eyes, and it looked like it's eternity. But all my life flashed in my mind. And at that moment I knew that whoever presses the trigger first will survive. And I actually killed him. I shot him. I had no choice. And my first instinct was to look for his identity card and his diskette. And very shortly after that, I was wounded. I was shot, and I woke up in Hadassah Hospital. And that's when it dawned on me what I have committed. And at that moment, my life changed. First of all, that Jordanian soldier is my brother. He's in me. He's a spirit within a spirit. And there's no doubt in my mind that I will meet him someday in afterlife. But it still haunts me. I have recurrent nightmares. But you can imagine what that does to a human being.
Uri, more about your fascinating life in just a moment. Don't go away. You're watching One on One. We'll be back with paranormalist Uri Geller in just a moment.